Well, Chris Bowen has finally managed to push Labor's safeguard mechanism over the line, getting the green light from Greens leader Adam Bandt. The deal was sealed despite no commitment from Labor to stop new coal and gas projects, which Bandt spent weeks insisting was non-negotiable. Let's go live now to Sky News' James Morrow in Canberra. James, is Labor breaking a promise not to give in to the Greens on climate change policy here, or do you think Labor has got the upper hand given they didn't have to compromise on that ultimatum that the Greens had set for them?
No, they absolutely have given in to the Greens here, Sharri. I mean, the Greens are clearly in the driver's seat. I know you just said that, it doesn't formally stop new coal and gas projects, but I'll tell you what, I've been speaking to people in the energy industry. It all but stops them dead. It puts billions of projects that were either in the planning stages or the feasibility stages absolutely on the line here. And it does so at a time when we need more gas, not less, to be our transition fuel. You remember 10 years ago, everybody was saying, oh, gas is going to be the transition fuel as we go through to the renewable economy. Well, the Greens are basically kamikaze when it comes to net zero, and Labor has strapped themselves to them on this, and it is going to wind up bringing absolutely to fruition the AEMO's predictions about energy shortages, price rises, and everything else, because they wanted to get this through rather than go back to the drawing board, as with The Voice.
Now, Anthony Albanese's $10 billion Housing Australia Future Fund is on track to be rejected by Senate crossbenchers. James, this would mark the federal government's first major legislative defeat. And of course, this is Albanese's election promise for more affordable housing. Are the Greens right to vote this policy down?
Yeah, look, this is one of those weird cases where a broken clock can be right twice a day, and this is absolutely one of those things. This Housing Affordability Future Fund, it's a bizarre idea where you're going to borrow money and then use the proceeds, borrow money at expensive rates, by the way, and then use that money to invest and use the dividends to that to buy houses. And then, Judith Sloan worked this out in The Australian today. She did the math, and basically they're assuming that they can get a new housing unit for $83,000. That's ridiculous. I don't know how they come up with this number. If you want more affordable housing, well, there's simple things you can do. I mean, you can just build more straight up, but you can also remove planning obstacles. You can work with the states. There's a million things you can do before you start doing this whole sort of weird jerry-rigged sort of operation to get the money to build the houses. It's just like what happened in New Zealand, where Jacinda Ardern promised, the same sort of thing and wound up with a couple of hundred at the end of her term.
Look, there are some critics of Australia, or many critics, but some of the critics of Labor's safeguard mechanism reforms are arguing that the government has ignored the role of natural gas in getting to net zero by 2050. And they say that in turn, this would make Australia's climate targets even harder to achieve. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, as I was saying before, gas was supposed to be the transition fuel, and now they are running gas out of the market. It's as simple as that. And, when you see things like Chris Bowen saying, oh, well, also you could have The Voice winding up, if that gets up, also affecting energy policy. I mean, who is going to wind up putting their money into investing in any sort of extractive industry in this country if this is the way that we're making policy? At the same time, all of this stuff is coming offline. We're not getting anywhere near enough renewables to, which are actually really expensive to get started, even if they're cheap to run later on. Not getting anywhere near enough to make up the shortfall. What will wind up happening, Sharri, is that the governments, both state and federal, will wind up having to pay coal and gas producers to stay online after trying to drive them out of the market for years.
Yeah. Now, new forecasts have shown that the NDIS is expected to put a $5.7 billion hole in the budget. Close to 200 Australians are joining the NDIS program every day. How has Treasurer Jim Chalmers responded to this?
Well, look, he's responded. He said that they're going to do something, and I think they're going to wind up using the NDIS as a way in the budget to wind up plugging some of the holes in the budget, and there will be reforms around that. But I think some of these figures, Sharri, are absolutely extraordinary. 200 people a day getting on it. Now, I have no doubt that the NDIS helps an awful lot of people who really genuinely need that help, and I think in a civilized society, we owe that help to them. But at the same time, you have to wonder about these numbers and how much of this, we've heard stories of warts, and also you have to wonder how many things are people are coming on because it's an easier way to get treatments that might not necessarily be disability, but they can get it through this program otherwise.
Yeah. Now, look, I want to go to Israel, James. I know you've been watching this closely. Benjamin Netanyahu has put a temporary stop on his controversial judicial reforms. There are fears that the mass protests and strikes across Israel will continue until he drops them altogether. Netanyahu actually spoke exclusively to Piers Morgan about the reforms. Have a look.
Okay, so the first thing is, I think, balancing the judicial, having the judges not select themselves, which is what this bill is about, does not only weaken democracy, it strengthens democracy, because in all other democracies, with the exception of the UK, and there may be one more exception, the judges do not choose themselves, the elected officials do. And that's what this bill does, and I think it's right.
James, Israeli President Herzog has actually come out against Netanyahu on this. What do you think?
Well, look, I think there's a lot happening under the surface here, Sharri. You know, Benjamin Netanyahu is absolutely hated by so many people around the world on the left, and he's hated for these proposed reforms, which really actually just balance out the executive and the judiciary in a way that they're balanced in a country like Australia or the United States. I have to wonder where all of these protests are being driven from, and I have to wonder, a lot about the motivations here. I don't think it's really about strengthening democracy. I think it's about getting rid of Benjamin Netanyahu, who has been the hate figure for so many people on the Israeli and global left for so long. All
right. James Morrow, both Sky News host, and you've got your US report on Friday night, and also federal political editor at the Daily Telegraph. Thanks for your time.